So, hello and welcome to our 22nd, I believe, Tarot On experience for the great global lockdown of 2020 during the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic, where virtually the whole world has come to a standstill. And I've just been listening to the Queen's speech here in England, and a very inspiring speech, very interesting use of language, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. What we're going to do today is introduce a little bit of NLP, which I'll explain fully. I want to introduce that so that we can start to develop our reading skills, so that when we're reading our deck of cards, we can actually deliver that in the most effective manner. Because it's one thing reading the cards, being able to interpret them, being able to weave a story, but a lot of the best readers have very powerful and effective ways of communicating the cards to the client. And we're going to take a look at some of the methods that we might adopt over the coming few days and weeks even. And hello to some friendly faces. Hello to Tali, who's joining us, to Denny, Debbie, Evelyn, Adela, Zia, Sharon, Lisa, Derek. Hello, Derek, and Marcy and Co. I'm glad to have you with us. So I'm going to be introducing NLP, and this will serve as a introduction. I'll label it so that people coming back to these videos, if they want to follow the NLP track of this, and they might have missed all of the wake world stuff and the Kabbalistic stuff, they might think this is a totally different sort of sequence of discussions and teaching. But here today starts our NLP trajectory for a little while, maybe for a week or so, and we will be building up to different ways of using language. So just as a reference point as well, I'm pulling two cards from my favourite out-of-print Oracle deck, the Philosopher's Stone, and today's cards. I'm putting these up on my personal wall for public, because I'm using them every day as a personal meditation contemplation practice. And today I had, let's get these this way around, confrontation. So you can see the confrontation that's going on here. The face, it's a bit shiny, of course, in the light, but it's shadowed. That's proper confrontation. You notice how the rock is sort of bending to the shape of what it's confronting, and that's something very important in the work that we're going to do. And then the second card was this card. I'll put that on that side, I think that makes more sense. Direction. It's a bit shiny, there we go. Direction. And you can see that this card has now been joined by others that are following behind, and they're sticking to one direction. So I felt that this was a very important message for us going down this tunnel and eventually coming out the other side without these rocks falling on us, because we're all going in the same direction. And I think that's very important. And it sort of was reflected in the Queen's speech today as well, that we're all in this together. This is not a war. There was some very interesting wartime language, but she turned it on its head to refer to the victories of war. So we're going to cover NLP, and I've got a brief reading from our reading material, our bedtime story, a wonderful story from Invisible Cities, one of the shorter cities. It's only about a page long, but I would recommend that if you want something beautiful to read. I've been enjoying going back through it and rereading it myself and thinking, oh, this is my favourite story, this is my favourite city, this is my favourite story, this, and so on, all the way through the book, because everyone is a beautiful piece of writing. So, hello Ileana, hello Lonnie as well, welcome. So Right, NLP, I'll briefly introduce it and I'm going to give you some homework, some things to try at home, and these may drive you a little bit wild. And I remember teaching my son a lot of these methods as we drove 2 hours to his school. And I had him 2 hours every day in the car with me, so we had to find things to do for a couple of years. And so I decided I was going to implicitly teach him NLP amongst a lot of other things. And one particular method, which we may get to, I taught him, and that evening I asked him how it had gone, and he said, I had to switch it off after 2 hours, it was driving me mad. It can drive you too mad, but it may drive others mad. So I would advise, if you're going to practice some of these things, to not become what in NLP terms is called a neurotic, lonely person, because you lose the ability to communicate with everyone because you're concentrating on your communication too much. So NLP is called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It arose in the sort of, I guess, mainly it's gone up and down, sort of 70s, 80s, 90s, and it's waxed and waned in popularity. And sometimes it's just equated with the most effective form of psychotherapy possible. Sometimes it's equated with snake oil salesmen and non-scientific gobbledygook pseudoscience. So I've used it, I first came across it when I was about 20, and I was living in Switzerland, and someone introduced me to it, and I thought it was this most incredible thing. And I started to model authors and books and come up with my own models of dialogue in books and plotting and characterization, which I came across recently. And it's sort of the ravings of a madman now, but back then I thought it was, you know, a powerful insight into the way that language was used and constructed. I then later on went on various training courses when I was retraining to become a sort of, I guess, trainer, self-help person, and I took training with the two people who founded it, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, and took different training with either of them and a few well-known sort of celebrity type NLPers like Paul McKenna. I also took training with people like Doug O'Brien and Stephen Gilligan, I think. And it was Stephen Gilligan who really inspired me most of all, because he was he approached it with a lot of heart, and I hadn't really seen that sort of, I guess, for want of a better word, spiritual side of it in a lot of the other training that I'd done to that point. So combining all of these and then going back, as was my wont, to look at the sources of it, and going back to Virginia Satir, a famous family therapist, and of course Milton H. Erickson, and then really devouring all of the work by him and on his language patterns, and then later on coming to clean language as another approach to how to use language patterns. So amongst all of that work, I then started to see private clients, and I've seen over the last 10 years several hundreds of clients for all sorts of things, from giving up smoking to anxiety to involuntary grunting to phobias, all sorts of issues that hypnotherapy and all of the usual ones like weight management, eating, dietary management, anxiety about health issues, and giving up smoking, of course, was very popular for a little while, and so on. So NLP can be used an awful lot of things. And I'd like to, I've been on various trainers courses as well. They are, if you go and look up NLP online, I would warn you that there is no standard for NLP, so your results may vary, the teaching may vary wildly from absolute genius to absolutely useless and potentially dangerous. So it is a very unregulated area of counselling and therapy, so just do bear that in mind. I do have some recommended books that I'll try and make a list of and that I found very useful and really pared down to a certain set of books that I think if you're only going to buy a few, then these are the books to buy, because obviously I had a very large library of NLP material over the years. Okay, so NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. It's a totally made-up name. Bandler and Grinder said that I think Bandler had sort of come up with the name because he was looking at a computer book and he was into computers and Grinder was into language. So the two of them came together to model how therapists talked in order to come up with a basic system and mechanism for how you too could learn to talk in a very powerful, effective way. And so they called it neuro-linguistic programming. But the interesting thing is that one of the first books on hypnotism by Braid, a Scottish medical doctor who studied hypnosis very early on in its history, he actually called it something like neuro language. I can't remember it and I haven't got my books to hand at the moment, but he called it something very similar to neuro-linguistic programming. And I always suspect that Bandler and Grinder didn't want to call it hypnosis or hypnotherapy because they were already ripping off Milton Erickson. Milton Erickson later came to call them bandit and swindler instead of Bandler and Grinder, because obviously they'd taken so much of his work and repackaged it. So he called them bandit and swindler. But I think that they might have wanted to call it hypnosis and hypnotherapy, but they just came up with a modern name for it. Because if you read Braid, who was a very dour Scottish doctor, he refers to it as something like neuro something sleep, neuro something sleep, and I think they just took the words and just slightly modified them in order to call it NLP, and it's got a nice buzz phrase sort of language to it. What it actually is a way of modeling how people appear to think unconsciously through their language patterns. That's just like one layer of it, but it has many others. But that's the one that we're going to look at today and the sort of avenue into NLP. Now, because of its relationship to hypnosis, I need to demonstrate hypnosis first, and then we're going to give you a couple of exercises to practice over the coming days, and hopefully you'll get very good at them, and that will help teach you more about NLP than I can possibly explain to you, because you'll feel it inside. So here's I'm going to hypnotize you. Okay, so this is perfectly safe. If you're driving a tractor at the moment, then you shouldn't be watching this anyway. If you're operating heavy machinery, then please stop operating the heavy machinery or switch this off for a moment, because I'm going to hypnotize you. I'll demonstrate hypnosis anyway. And I'm going to do that in the usual way that people think about hypnosis, which is just by speaking. I'm not going to do anything else other than speak, and I'm going to force you, no matter what happens in your own brain, I'm going to force you by the power of words alone. I'm going to force you to do something. And not only that, I'm going to make it even more difficult for a Oh, sorry, I've just seen that Bandit and Swindler were the names of my first pair of ferrets. Um, as Evan is saying, never heard that. I've got quite a few books on the history of NLP told from different people, and obviously their stories vary as to what went on. And Stephen Gilligan actually worked with Milton H. Erickson, so he had a lot more first-person accounting of how NLP developed. So, right, so by the power of words, I'm going to force you, but even better, I'm going to force you, I'm going to tell you not to do something, and then you're going to do it anyway because of the power of hypnosis. Okay, are you ready? You put up your mental shields, get ready to block hypnosis, because some people say that they can't be hypnotized. I've never found any. Some people find it more difficult to enter a trance state than others. Some people experience hypnosis differently than others. About 1 in 10 people are really ready to go into a deep trance, and yeah, that's sort of how stage hypnosis works, because there's at least 1 in 10 people, so you know how many volunteers you need in order to get someone who's really good at it, and then peer pressure them into behaving in a particular way. So here we go, and hello to Michael, who's joined us and who's just joined rejoined the Tarot Association. So thank you very much. That helps support all of our work by joining the association. That wasn't hypnosis, by the way. It was just subliminal, but not that subliminal. So here we go. Ready? Ready, go. Do not think of a giraffe. Do not think of a giraffe. And particularly if you're really trying to resist, I do not want you to think of a giraffe on a motorcycle. You must not think of this, because I'm going to hypnotize you. And you must not think of a giraffe on a motorcycle. Okay? Now, I know it's a little bit of a lame thing to do. You can close your eyes while you don't think of a giraffe on a motorcycle, or you can keep your eyes open. That is entirely up to you. But it's a bit of a lame example, but I think it does demonstrate how the unconscious works very powerfully. Because what we're doing there is we are ensuring that we demonstrate the fact that the unconscious cannot process a negative. The conscious mind can, but in order for the conscious mind to understand what not to do, the unconscious mind has to process the what not to do in order to understand the instructions. If I tell you not to think of a giraffe, then the unconscious has to process the giraffe for the conscious mind to know what not to do, because it has to follow that simple mechanism of conscious and unconscious. Does that make sense? That is hypnosis. By the power of words, I have forced you to do something even whilst telling you not to do it. Now, this sounds a lame example, but it's actually very powerful, because now you might understand why when you tell a child who's balanced on a wall eating an ice cream, John, don't fall off the wall. And of course the child wobbles and falls off, because the unconscious mind has to process falling off the wall, the lack of balance of that, for the conscious mind to not do it. Make sense? So it's why it's very important to say to someone, oh, and Purple Spotted Oranges is a very good book, which I'll come back to. So if a hypnotist was approaching that same child on the wall with the ice cream, I would say, Johnny, while you stand on that wall very, very still and quietly, enjoying that ice cream, I want you to think about how you're safest coming off it, okay? And that is a totally different way of speaking than, oh my God, don't fall off the wall, which is the natural way of speaking. And that's because someone processes themselves falling off the wall in order to know that the child is in danger, feels worried and concerned about that, and then projects that outwards onto the child. Whereas a hypnotherapist or an NLP trained person, or someone more considered with their language patterns, is going to look at the child, think, I am not in danger, the child may be in danger, so I will incorporate and utilize the fact that they are on the wall. That is a valid, verifiable experience for the child. So while you stand on that wall so safe and sound, I just want you to take a moment, enjoying the ice cream, to think about how you're going to get off it safely in a moment. And that is a slightly different way of thinking. Now, the important thing about this in therapeutic change work, counselling and so forth, education, training, is this. I went to one workshop with Doug O'Brien. Beautiful language patterns, very natural, so natural that you don't notice he's doing them until you watch videos later and analyse them moment by moment and see how powerful the language patterns are. But one of the things that he said was, you are not the first hypnotist on the scene. That is to say that someone will already have their own programs from their parents, their and their parents, their peers, their teachers, their family, their colleagues, and their relationships and so forth, all serve to help hypnotize us. And one of the interesting things about that is, often when I've been talking to people who want to lose weight or give up smoking and so on, is they'll say, I tell myself all of the time, I mustn't eat. So again, what is happening there? I mustn't eat. If the person is telling themselves, I mustn't eat, I mustn't get fat, what is the poor unconscious doing? The unconscious is constantly processing what not to do. So the unconscious mind is constantly hypnotizing itself and just getting eat, 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 fat, fat, eat, fat, fat, eat, and so on all of the time. Until the only way to release that for the poor conscious mind is to get overwhelmed by the unconscious to say, God, eat already, for heaven's sake. It doesn't matter. I'm already fat. Because it's constantly reprogramming itself by the poor conscious mind, doing exactly the same thing that people do to the child with the ice cream, and that is to say, don't do it, don't eat. So when people come to me for non-smoking, the first thing I say to them is, you are not going to leave this room as a non-smoker. Because I'm not going to do that. It'll be a nice bonus if that happens, but that is not my intention for our first session. And I totally let them off the hook. Absolutely remove any pressure, any tension, any anxiety about whether it'll work or not by removing that entirely. And that is because as we know, they only have one way of getting out of the anxiety, and that's to smoke. They use smoking as a way to relax, most people will say. And of course, if you tell them that you have now cured their smoking or got rid of it through hypnosis, they are going to worry that it hasn't worked. And the first thing that they're going to do while they're worrying that it hasn't worked is smoke, because that is their only strategy. So it's far better to let them off the hook, give them a strategy for relaxing or doing what they get out of smoking in some other way, and when you've given that to them and they've demonstrated it to themselves, then you can start to remove the habitual behaviour, the smoking. Okay? Now, I wanted to introduce that very briefly, very quickly, and give you a worked example for your practice. And then we're going to maybe look at a tarot card as an example. I wasn't going to look at tarot today particularly, just introduce NLP, but we'll have a quick look at a tarot card. And then I'm going to quickly read from Invisible Cities as well as our bedtime story. Okay, so here's your assignment, your homework. There are two really. You can do either or both of these. It's up to you. That incidentally is an example of a double bind. And if you go back through the video, I'll have used a lot of examples in this of NLP, because when we teach NLP, to get to the point of it, we always do the thing that we're going to say just a moment before we say it in order to make the point, because we have to demonstrate, as Bandler said, you go there first. If you're going to try and relax someone, you go from tension to relaxation right in front of them, and then you lead them. It's a lot more elegant than telling someone to calm down. It's to get worked up yourself with them and then quickly go through your process of calming down and take them with you. And quite often, if my clients were late and apologetic, I'd say to them, oh my God, me too, I couldn't find anywhere to park, I was late coming in. So anyhow, and then I would, I wouldn't try and pull off the I'm a totally calm therapist, counsellor, hypnotherapist, whatever. I would just freak out and panic as they were doing, and then I would go down quickly and take them with me, because I found that's the most effective way of doing it. So here we go then. I want you to practice this first of all. I'll do the maybe easier one first. Practice linking words. Okay, linking words are words like and, where, there, because, so. You'll find more as well, but we'll start with those. So the trick is to be able to talk, and we demonstrated this a few sessions ago with tricking the irregular voice. But for you, I just like you to practice it quite naturally as you're speaking. Whenever you think that you might have time to practice it, I used to practice this in a car when I was driving quite a lot. As I mentioned earlier on, there was a time in my life when I used to drive an awful lot. And I know this story bores some people because I've told it so many times, and when I tell it, I tend to go into an altered state myself as I relive all of the times that I was driving along the motorway, and it just seemed like the road would go on forever, and often it did, because I was driving for at least 2 hours, and when I did. So can you see what I'm doing? I'm using linking words to not pause, break the sentence, okay? And it's as simple as that. I want you to practice out loud, make sure no one is listening in on you, and just practice out loud making lots of linking sentences. And it sounds unnatural. You may know people who do this automatically. And Evelyn's saying using linking words or in tarot write-ups. It's really important because there are some tricks that you can then do a bit later on when you get good at linking words, and I will teach these to you really quickly. Okay, so that was two proposals and then a suggestion at the end of it using linking words. And I changed my tonality in that final bit of the sentence. But the first thing to do is to be able to practice it and get into a swing of it so that you can talk like this whenever you need to switch it on. It's really easy, as anyone can do it when you really concentrate on, not even concentrating, because it's an easy thing to do, so you find yourself doing it all of the time. Who knows how it may be, and so on. Okay, and just practice slowly or quickly, it doesn't matter, as long as you have your own voice for it. Very important to have your own voice for it. Exercise 2. This is a slightly more tricky one. I do this when I'm doing group workshops, small groups, teaching LP, practitioner, master practitioner, and so on. I really like to do this on master practitioner courses, because sometimes people come and they say, I've done all of the practitioner courses, master practitioner courses, and so on. And I say, oh, great, everyone's down. I'd like you to introduce yourselves. And as everyone gives that big sigh that people do when you ask everyone to go around the table and introduce themselves, I say, but I'd like you to do it like this. My name is Marcus. Marcus is cats. I drove I here to here. this presentation, this, from a from place, there place, where, I where, live. I live I in the in Lake District, lake. So you, so, see, how, see. This sentence, this is constructed is, because what, because I am I, doing, is doing, pairing, each pairing, two words two, together. Okay, so I would like you to practice that. It's called, there really isn't a name for it, and I only heard it once in passing, but pivot grammar. Call it pivot grammar, okay? So what you do is you say two words, think of two words, in a normal sentence, so I get people to tell me in a group who they are, what their name is, what they do as a job, and where they've come from and how they've got here. Okay? So they will have to say, my name my, is Marcus, Marcus is, and if the natural sentence ends with one word, just repeat the word, cats. My name, so instead of saying my name is Marcus Katz, I say my name I, is Marcus, Marcus is Katz. Okay? Now do it, you have to think ahead of what you are saying, and that is the point of the practice. The more you practice this, the more you will find yourself naturally thinking slightly ahead of when you're going to make the point, because you know in your head what you are saying first before you say it. And when you when and can do it, it can do over three words three over, then you might you then understand better how better understand NLP. Or perhaps you could you, or perhaps do it for, do it, hang on, I'll do it in a second. Do it 4 times for it do. Maybe you could do you maybe could. Okay, so the more you do it, the more you can practice doing it, but do it pivot first. Just do 2 before you try 3 or 4 or even longer, because it backs up in your head and you have to really sort of go backwards and forwards. Okay, so that's 2 things to do. Linking words, which you know are and, is, off, where, because, so. All of the linking words that allow you to endlessly do a sentence without stopping, and pivot grammar. Make sense? I want you to practice that and go quickly inside your own brain over the next couple of days, because you will never ever listen to people again in the same way or speak again once you've learned a little bit of NLP from me. I can assure you that. Okay? Now, just to demonstrate, interesting, say for example, if we look at a card like this, I just wanted to demonstrate offhand a few NLP type things that we might use in practice, and I'm going to go through all of these as we go along. So this is just, I wanted to assure you that this had something to do with tarot, because I don't know about you, but when I look at this card, I see something very important about it. In fact, one of the most important things about this card, a lot of people suggest, is the fact that the man is sat with crossed arms. His arms are crossed and he is sat here, and we can see that he has the cups here. And it's funny, isn't it, when you think about the most satisfying thing you ever did, and we can see in this card how he feels so satisfied And it's good to feel satisfied, isn't it? When you know that you can just sit down like him with his arms crossed, like so. It's good to know that you can feel satisfied. Because this card, most people would say, and sometimes I disagree, but most of the time I know that it's right to think of this card as satisfaction. And although the word is written on each of these cups, it could be. We could imagine satisfaction being, and in fact, the colour of the card, when you think about it, is like all of the colour of the wall, which is just coincidental. But it's those interesting coincidences that we can feel satisfied somehow that the universe looks after us. It's powerful stuff, really, when you think about it. To know that, in fact, I feel quite satisfied just thinking about how we can just sit like you're sat now, just like this man is sat. Okay, now some of that was a little bit heavy-handed in order to demonstrate how we are using some language patterns, very heavy-handed in that, to really relay a message. Now, if I asked you to consider the feeling that I was trying to get across in that card, I'm sure you would have the one word that I kept mentioning in different contexts, and weaving it slightly with a slight bit of pivot on a sentence, with a few linking words, and so on. There were other methods there that we're going to cover over the next few days. But that's how I use it in a tarot card reading. I actually use the language a lot less heavy-handed than that in the tarot card reading to help me convey what the divination is actually telling me. So NLP and divination can be brought together for a very powerful communication, because then we're channeling like the magician. We're channeling from above and to below. And the book that, yes, satisfaction. I'm very satisfied. I feel satisfied that that worked. So, what was I going to say? Yeah. So, what we are going to do is look at a lot of NLP and the fact that it can be used in tarot card reading. I had to go back to the last flag I planted in a sentence so I could go beyond it. And the next thing I was going to say was the book that introduced NLP and tarot together was my first book, Tarosophy. I've been writing Tarosophy Squared, the sequel to that book, for several years, but in the meantime, in order to earn a living, I've written a lot of other books for the mass market, but it is Tarosophy that is really the core of my approach to tarot, particularly using modelling of NLP. So if you're interested in this particular way of working, and Tarosophy is the book where I dumped all of this stuff the first time round. And I've got 2 books on the go at the moment, well, quite a lot of books at the moment, but Tarosophy Squared is sort of 80% done, and NLP Magic, which also is mainly for people working with hypnotherapy, NLP approaches, with vignettes of client stories with their permission to demonstrate how each of the methods can work with real clients over the years. Hoping to have that written maybe over the next couple of years. I've been working on it for long enough. Okay, so I want you to practice pivot grammar and linking words over the next few days and listen for it. One of the best ways to learn NLP is not to become a pretentious prat by going on a course and getting a certificate and being all fancy with your words. The best way of learning NLP is to listen to people, is to really listen carefully to people. That is the most important thing that you can do. Now then, I want to read our bedtime story, a short city from Invisible Cities, just to end up with. And perhaps this has a little relationship to NLP in the way that some of the stories I've been telling over the last 3 weeks has it been almost, or longer, have had something to do with the actual thing that we've been talking about, generally speaking. Who knows? So, bedtime story, everyone. I hope you're sitting in a satisfactory position. Those who arrive at Thekla can see little of the city. Beyond the plank fences, the sackcloth screens, the scaffoldings, the metal armatures, the wooden catwalks hanging from ropes or supported by sawhorses, the ladders, the trestles. If you ask, why is Thekla's construction taking such a long time? The inhabitants continue hoisting sacks, lowering leaded strings, moving long brushes up and down as they answer, so that its destruction cannot begin. And if asked whether they fear that, once the scaffoldings are removed, that the city may begin to crumble and fall to pieces, they add hastily in a whisper, not only the city. If dissatisfied with those answers, someone puts up his eye to a crack in the fence, he sees cranes pulling up other cranes, scaffoldings that embrace other scaffoldings, beams that prop up other beams. What meaning does your construction have? He asks. What is the aim of a city under construction, unless it is a city? Where is the plan you are following? The blueprint. We will show it to you as soon as the working day is over. We cannot interrupt our work now, they answer. Work stops at sunset. Darkness falls over the building site. The sky is filled with stars. There is the blueprint, they say. City of Thekla in Calvino's Invisible Cities. Okay, I hope you enjoyed your bedtime story. I'm enjoying reading them, and I look forward to the dire results of your intrepid expedition into language patterns, practicing pivot grammar and linking words as on some of the bare construction of the city of language that you'll be making for yourself with NLP over the coming days and weeks. I hope this presentation has been to your deep satisfaction, and I look forward to continuing on with some NLP and some tricks with it over the coming days, weeks, months, and so on. There is the blueprint. Bye for now.